A stepfather throws his baby into the sewer, but you won't believe what happened next. As soon as the baby was born, the evil stepfather took him in his arms and threw him into the sewer. That's where poor little Aaron was left, because that was the name given to him by the homeless man who saved his life from dying in that place where he was thrown and raised him without knowing that years later this would happen. It was Friday afternoon, and Don Pedro, a man who collected garbage and plastics to sell them on his usual route, heard the cry of a baby in that filthy sewer tunnel and thought he was crazy or a figment of his imagination. But when he looked closely, he saw the newborn baby, and with great difficulty, Don Pedro managed to get out of that place full of putrid water and place the child in the small wheelbarrow in which he loaded the waste he was selling. And with the money he had managed to get for the day, he went to the nearest pharmacy. He bought diapers, milk, and bottles for her Aaroncito, the name he chose in honor of his late father. He carried him wrapped in his own sweater, and when his friends and acquaintances asked about that tender baby, he answered that he had found him, and they all agreed that he was crazy for taking care of a child whose origin he had never even met. On the other hand, while he was enjoying himself with his baby in his arms, in the house of Donna Lucia, the child's mother, everything was despair. The woman was a middle-class woman who fell in love with an engineer who was at a construction site near her house. They fell in love and carried on their love. Months later, she was pregnant, and when she arrived at the construction site where her beloved was, she was told that he had suddenly been transferred to another construction site. Lucia was upset and very nervous because she did not understand how fate could be so cruel to her and her child. None of the masons knew where to find the engineer, so she went home to disconsolate, and when she told her parents what had happened, her father exploded in fury and told her that she would have to marry anyone to cover up the mistake. Javier, the girl's best friend who had always been in love with her, offered to raise and adopt her son as his own. But the woman said, "But Javier, I don't love you. I hope you understand that our marriage will be merely for appearances." To which the man replied that he only wanted to help her. So a month later, the wedding took place. At first, it was supposed to be a simple family wedding, but the girl's parents invited all their friends, and it turned into a big celebration. Everything was in abundance except happiness, because although Javier was happy, Lucia could not hide her tears and told everyone that she was crying with happiness. However, the murmurings were not long in coming. They went on their honeymoon, and the young husband could not stand the girl's rejection and decided to party with her money. The following days, things went from bad to worse. When they returned, they settled in the beautiful house that Lucia's parents had given to them, and the man made it clear that the gentleman would have to take care of all the expenses because he was not willing to work. The gentleman accepted the deal, so he was living an excellent life. He would go from party to party without worrying about any expenses, and if the woman complained to him, he would tell her that thanks to him, she had not been dishonest in society and that she had better keep him happy. Otherwise, he would tell the whole truth and tell everyone that she was carrying another man's child in her womb. And because of all these situations, the man pondered what he would do when the child was born. So he came to the conclusion that he should get rid of it to punish Lucia for her rejection. Many ideas came to his mind until he decided that he would steal the baby to abandon it to its fate. He did not let the woman go to the hospital to give birth, but hired a midwife, and when the child was born, he gave the mother a sleeping pill, and taking advantage of her sleep, he took the child and left it in the gutter. When Lucia awoke, her husband was asleep beside her. She got up to see the child in the cradle, and when she did not see him, she began to scream. The man got up in astonishment, and when he went down to the second floor, he pretended to see that the house had been disturbed and several things had been taken, and he was immediately told that the child had been stolen. Lucia immediately called her parents, who notified the police. Meanwhile, Javier was crying for his son, and no one suspected that he might be involved. The search began immediately but was unsuccessful. Don Pedro was happy with his little baby. He made a bed for him, and every day he got up at dawn to fold the clothes of his tender child because he had bought clothes, and some people who saw him in the street gave him money to help him. He would take the child to work, and he would stick him with a sheet while in the wheelbarrow he would carry the things he collected to sell at the recycling center. Don Pedro's friends made fun of him and assured him that there was no point in sacrificing himself for the life of a son who was not his own, because when he grew up, he would be ashamed of him. However, what they told him did not matter to him. in spite of how badly he had fared with his blood family. Don Pedro lived in solitude in the middle of the woods because his wife and 2 children left him when he met a guy who had a lot of money and didn't care that he had been a working father and paid for the best schools with his bus driver's salary. So they left and were never heard from again. He sold his house and built the little cabin in the woods where Aaroncito grew up. The boy was always with him, and when he started to walk, he helped him carry and lift the bottles they sold for recycling. The boy never lacked for anything, and Don Pedro took care to keep him well-dressed and well-shod. When he turned 4 years old, he enrolled him in school where he spent the whole day. There he was fed, and his education was of quality, and in the afternoon, he picked him up. When he did well selling recycling materials, they would go to a modest restaurant for lunch or to celebrate. Aaron would call his father Don Pedro, who had told him that his mother had died in childbirth. The boy loved his father and promised him that one day he would no longer have to work because he would take care of him. The man was pleased with these words and was sure that his son would be a great man. The boy continued studying, and at the age of 15 he got a job as a gardener in the house of one of his classmates. Every Saturday he went to mow the lawn and water the plants, a job for which he was paid a considerable amount, so with that money he helped his father. When Aaron graduated from high school, he studied to be an auto mechanic, and to his surprise, his father told him he had some money saved in the bank and gave it to him to set up his own shop. Aaron was excited and he couldn't believe it, and with that money he bought the tools and machinery he needed to open his store. The day they opened the store, after the inauguration party when they were both about to go to bed, Don Pedro decided to reveal the truth to his son. When he found out, Aaron was surprised and went out to hug his father while thanking him for everything he had done for him, even though he did not carry his blood. Then the young man promised him with greater enthusiasm that he would soon rest and would not have to work again. The first days in the workshop were not easy because he had no customers. However, 2 months later, not only had his number of customers increased, but also the number of workers. So Aaron kept his promise and did not allow his father to continue working and told him that he was going to start looking for his biological family. And without any clues, the boy hired a private detective to whom he showed the sheet on which he had been abandoned, but that wasn't enough. After 2 years of searching, Aaron stopped paying and felt defeated. One morning, the detective returned to the shop to give him back the sheet he had been given, and upon seeing it, the lady who was asking for money from the shop's customers burst into tears and told him that it reminded her of her lost son. Don Pedro, who remained in the shop, was curious and approached her, and the woman told him the date of birth of her son and that it was the same date he had found the child. The detective told them that it could be a coincidence, so he proposed to do a DNA test. And a week later, the results came back. And the beggar was Dona Lucia, from whom Javier had taken all her property and forced her into destitution. Aaron confronted Javier, and Javier laughed and told him that he had thrown him into the sewer, never imagining that he was accompanied by a policeman who captured him and, in a trial, stripped him of the goods he had taken from Lucia. Aaron finally had his mother. He took care of her, who was still a young woman, and Don Pedro was happy because he was already old, and his son would not be alone when he was gone. The 3 of them lived happily while the evil stepfather spent 10 years in jail. If you like this story, share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Talk to you next time.